Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What Drives You. I'm one of the co-hosts, Stan Windhorn, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Carl Bauer.
Hey, hello everybody. I'm excited to hear your friend Cami's story today.
Yeah, so Carl, we've done, gosh, we're getting close to 50 episodes so far, and a lot of times we've had some amazing guests, and we've talked about what drives them to success. And a lot of times it's been, I mean, success is different for different people, but a lot of times it's been sort of business success. But today, we're talking about a whole different kind of success, a whole different kind of resiliency, with our guest, Cami Johnson. Cami, welcome to What Drives You. Appreciate you getting up early in the morning to do this with us.
So thank you so much for having me.
So, Carl, I've shared with you a little bit about Cami's story, and I've learned more about Cami's story. This is not an easy subject to talk about, but it certainly is an important subject to talk about. So, Cami, I'm going to let you tell more about your story, but this basically centers around, just let's just call it abuse from a husband, ex-husband, and kind of the journey you've had to go through with trying to get help in these situations and the changes that you've made. I also want to talk a little bit about how it's been other women who have really stepped up to help your cause. But let's just kind of start. I mean, maybe not from the beginning of your marriage, but maybe the first really traumatic experience that you went through and how that played out. Do you mind sharing that with us?
No, not at all, not at all. And I'll try to not go too much into the details of our, marriage. I will say that I grew up Mormon. Um, I grew up with a mom that stayed home and a dad that provided. So I know every story is different, but in my scenario, it was definitely you get married, you have kids, you be a wife and a mom and support your husband. Um, my situation was that I got married young and stay at home mom, but in a very controlled, abusive environment. Um, we didn't have divorce in our family at all. And so divorce was kind of off the table. But it got to the point that was so horrific that I just couldn't do it anymore. And then I found out that he was doing investment fraud with several friends and family members. So it was really to the point of like, I cannot do this anymore.
Right.
Parents still kind of giving me that, like, just, keep going, you can do this. And then one night, I was done. I was just done. We decided to separate. And he had come over back to the house and he took my children and me and hauled us all into this bathroom on the main floor. He had a gun and he told us that if I left, then we were done. We were done. We were done. Luckily, my daughter, she was in junior high at the time, had ran to the phone and called my parents, who called the police department, who the police came. However, at that point, he had just kind of laughed and joked with the police officers. Nothing, like, I'm terrified. I had no doubt in my mind that he was taking us out that night. That was,
So, Cami, when you say done, when he's saying you're done, you're meaning that he was going to use the gun and
oh,
kill
yeah,
the whole family.
yeah, I had
Yeah.
no going to kill me and my kids. That,
Yeah.
my parents, bless their hearts, love their souls, finally was like, no, we've got to get you out of this. This is insane. Well, that night though, with the police officers, they literally, he just kind of skipped away laughing, not even joking, but his demeanor quickly changed to, laughing and joking, and the police officers kind of, not taking it super serious at that point, even though there's a weapon involved, mind you. And so they just told him to leave and that there was nothing they could do unless I got a protective order, a restraining order, and gave me a card of where to go the next morning to do that. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question on this part? So because a lot of this has to do, I don't want to jump ahead too far in the story, but a lot of this has to do with the lack of help you got from the police department there. But he's got a gun. And I mean, what were they thinking? Like, oh, no big deal. It's just a gun. I mean, this is the part that I just have a hard time understanding.
Well, the thing I've learned through this whole justice system, and that unless you end up in a hospital or unless you're dead, are you taken serious at all? I mean, I understand, like what else can they do? But why are we waiting until people are in the hospital or dead before we try to save their lives? And there's story after story, especially in the state of Utah, that people are not, there's no survivors. So, anyways, I did go get the protective order the next morning and met Julie, my advocate, who's a very important person in this story. Um, Julie sat down with me and she helped me get the protective order, the restraining order. She looked at me and she goes, I'm worried for you. And I looked at her and I said, well, just remember my face, because I promise you, it's not if he does this, it's when he does this. So fast forward, we'll skip all the trauma in between, except that he continued, even though he did meet somebody, got married to a lady that had two young, small girls. He still continued to violate his protective order, stalked us, knew where we were, threatened us, me and my kids. And the thing about that as well is even having that protective order, even having the restraining order, even going to court with the proof and the evidence, he would spend maybe a night in the local jail and released. Like it was a piece of paper that did nothing. So after about 4 or 5 times of that, I gave up. I'm like, I'm not even going to bother at this point. It's a piece of paper and nobody cares. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't protect me. Nobody cares. What's one night, right? All it did was make him more angry and angry and angrier at me.
Right.
So
Right.
fast forward, my son is graduating high school and decides he's going to go on a Mormon mission. And in the meantime, I will say that I did not get much child support, no financial help through this man. He just always was self-employed, so of course they couldn't garnish wages, right? Like it was hell. Like imagine the worst, the worst. That was what we were going through.
Yeah.
So my son, fast forward, decides he's going to go on this LDS mission after he graduates high school. And he had called his dad, because I'm a single mom, and financially, he went to his dad like, hey, will you be willing to support me? People that don't know about Mormon missions, like you have to come up with a lot of money up front because you have to have certain clothing, suits. I mean, it's thousands of dollars to get ready to go on a mission, and then you pay a monthly fee for 2 years while they're out. So he went to him saying, look, I'm going to do this. Will you support me? Well, I get a text a few weeks later and he's like, hey, will you call me? Last thing I ever want to do is talk to him or meet with him ever. Right. That was like never, ever. He's like, it's about Riley, my son's mission. Like, please call me. So I did call him and he just said, hey, I am turning over a new leaf. I want to be a better person. I want to pay you all the back child support, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars, not thousands of dollars. And
Right.
medical bills for the kids that he had never paid on. He's like, I will support Riley on this mission. I want to come and, take care of all the necessities he needs to get gone. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. A miracle has
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Cami, I want to keep you going on this, but I want to just kind of, so what is there nothing in Utah? He owes you hundreds of $1,000s. He's not paying for his own kids. That sounds like that system dropped the ball on you too. Do they do nothing about that?
100%, because he continued to be self-employed. So they could only garnish what they can garnish. So if you're self-employed, and they're like, I know other states for not paying child support, you go to jail for not paying child support. Here it's a process. We did go through that process. Same thing, right? You get a judgment. What's a judgment? You know what I mean? There's nothing that they can do. So yes, we have ORS, which definitely tries to garnish those. But if you're self-employed, he knew the system. He knew the system for sure.
Yeah.
That system does fail unless they have a job.
Right. So he basically being self-employed, he could just say, well, I'm only making $1,000 a month when it could be 10,000. Is that kind of what you're alluding to on that?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
So
okay.
for him, and this is, years after our divorce too, right? So for him to say, look, I'm going to finally make good on everything. I am going to, turn over a new leaf. I have this new family, which he had since had another, little girl. So he goes, I just want to make changes in my life. Now I'm still like, I'm not dumb, right? I'm still hesitant, but I was like, okay, well, we'll see where this goes. He said, I'm coming because by now we're living about like 2.5 hours apart. So he just said that I'm coming into, to your town for business. So if we can just meet up, that would be great. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can, I'll meet up at the, somebody's got to be present, the boys present, whatever, right? So he comes into town, he picks up my son, takes him shopping. He comes back with just like a couple things like socks or something silly, and I was just kind of like, well, what? I thought you guys were shopping for all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, I don't know, he wants to talk to you. So anyways, he had come to the place I was living and he was outside, and so I went out with the boys because I knew never to be alone with him, just for my own my thinking at the time too was that I always wanted a witness of what he said or what he did, right? So
Okay.
my son walked out with me and we were talking, and he was like, I'm just staying in the hotel that's just basically right across the street from where I was living. It was very close. Like, I'm talking, I could walk to this hotel. And I said, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, I forgot the check and the cash and some documents that I need you to sign that I paid off all your child support, which he needed for the ORS, saying that he had paid everything in full. And he said, I've left all those things at the hotel. And I said, well, you can go get him and you can bring him back. That would be just fine. And he's like, no, it's stupid. Like, why can't you just go over there and get it? Like, it's not a big deal. Just come over. And I'm like, no.
Right.
Like, I mean, here we're having an argument, which is very typical of us anyways. Well, my son, and this is where it's the hardest part of my story, I think, which is funny, like of all the things that I've gone through, the hardest part of my story is my son saying, Mom, it's going to be okay. Just go with dad, quit arguing. And if you don't come back, my word, I'll come get you. Like, just stop the madness, go over there and take care of this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you further in the story, you'll see why this is so hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I reluctantly go over to this hotel. We are actually walking into the hotel, and he looks at me and he goes, why are you always so nervous to be around me? Do you think I'm going to kill you or something? And I said, yeah, actually I do. I mean, it was a conversation. But
Mhm.
we go into the hotel room, and it was like a suite. So there was a table, chairs, kitchen, right? So on the table was the money, cash, a check, documents. And so in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is for real. He's really
This is really happening finally. Yeah.
he's really going to do this. He hands me the cash in my hands and the check. So I'm like, okay, we're good. Um, he's like, if you'll just sign this is great, right? And I'm like, okay, like, wow, this is awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. This whole thing happened in a matter of less than 10 minutes.
Right.
And he offers me a drink. And I said, no, I don't want a drink. And I knew, like, oh my gosh, never would I trust him having a drink, right? Like, it was even a thought in my head at that time. And
Yeah.
he's like, are you serious? Like, you won't even have a drink with me after all this? And I'm like, no, like, I'm good. So anyways, he's always been an entrepreneur. Who knows what he really did do, but as far as I knew, he was an entrepreneur. So at that point, he pulls out similar, I would say it looks similar to those like 12-hour energy drink things that are in those little,
Yeah.
right? Pops it
Like
over.
this?
Absolutely, just like that. 5 hours.
Yeah.
5 hours.
Yeah.
Exactly like,
This is my coffee in the morning. Yeah.
super similar to that. And he says, oh, hey, do you mind trying this and see if the flavor of it, because I'm marketing this. So it was had its own, like, I would have not even thought twice about it. He's like, and first of all, I said no. And then he goes, you got to be kidding me. So I'm like, okay, fine, let me just try it. And so it literally tasted just like one of those, right? Like nothing out of the ordinary. And he did say,
Yeah.
too, I gave him to both the boys. And so I don't understand why you're making a big deal about it. Just try it. So I'm like, fine, try it. I'm like, oh, it tastes great. That's great. I literally had my purse and my cell phone in my hand, turning the door to the hotel. And I remember nothing after that. Absolutely nothing. I, in my life, will admit I have been drunk out of my mind, but I can still recollect something that happened. Like I have
Right.
recollection. This is zero recollection of any.
So obviously he put some kind of a serious drug in there.
So yeah. The next thing I even remember is um being back at my house. I vaguely remember getting there, but nothing until I'm laying like in my bed. I will go back and tell you because of my son, because he was very active for about 5 hours.
Mm,
This is a hard, but for
yeah.
hours trying to get me back home. Relentlessly trying to get me back home. And his dad being very convincing that we were partying in the hotel, having a great time. I was drinking, um, all the things. And this was not at all in my character. So my son
Yeah.
still like, you've got to be kidding me, with weighing back and forth, like, who's telling me the truth here? Like, what's going on here? Um, and if you ask him that part of the story, it was hell. For
Must have been horrible for him.
my dad saying, he's here to help me. My mom would never do this. My mom would never hang out with him. What's going on? He tried FaceTiming several times, and those FaceTimes um, were me in a bed with the sheets up to here, and him saying that I had passed out and just let me sleep. So at that point, my son's like, I don't know, but still had a very gut wrenching, I got to go get my mom. Even if she's sleeping, I need to go get my mom. He did call and say, look, if you don't bring her home, I'm coming to get her, like right now. Like, I don't care if she's asleep. I don't care what's going on. She needs to come home. Now I got to back up just a little bit because I had told my kids just 2 weeks prior, do not ever take me to the emergency room unless I'm dying because I don't have health insurance right now.
Oh man.
So my son does get me home, and my ex-husband is yelling at him saying, like, just put her to bed, whatever you do, just put her to bed and she'll sleep it off. So anyways, the back, he saw me, he saw my condition, and he still was like, dude, my mom's got to go to the emergency room, something's very wrong, I've never seen my mom like this. But his dad saying, put me to bed, right? So he puts me to bed. And in the back of his head, no way am I taking her to the emergency room, she'll kill me, right?
Right.
I'm laying there, and I had my cell phone because Riley had said, give her her phone or her purse. My goodness. So he just kind of throws it at me, not understanding, what to do at this point. I have it in my hand and I'm going like this, and it dialed a neighbor. Now, mind you, this is like 3 a.m. in the morning. Who's
Mm,
answer their phone? But when you hit the phone, it will sometimes call somebody. It happened to call my neighbor that was up because she was talking to a friend back in Europe. And so she happened to be up. So she could hear me, but not me talking. And she kept saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And so she just ran over as fast as she could because she thought that is just weird. Something's wrong. Which, I mean, anyone else would probably just like, oh,
yeah.
Busta Butt called me, or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Pocket dial. Yeah.
My door happened to be unlocked. I just think some of these things are not by chance. She opens the door, she sees me there, and she's like, Riley, she needs to go to the hospital. And he's like, no, she'll kill me. She goes, I don't care. She can kill me. I'm taking her to the hospital. And so Riley said, well, just don't call the ambulance for sure. But let's get her to the hospital. So they get me to the hospital. I'm I'm literally dead at this point. My lips are blue. I'm completely beyond drug overdose. They do whatever they do, and I remember coming to and them asking me questions like, where were you? What did you do? Where have you been? And then they have to do like a whole drug report, like a pharmaceutical report of if you've had any of these prescriptions. They do blood tests and they're like, we're doing a rape kit, like all these things. And I'm just, what on earth? Like, I just want
Mhm.
to get this money and I have this money in my the check, and I'm like, look in my purse. And obviously no money in my purse, no check, no nothing. Um, Riley calls my ex at this time and he's like, Mom's in the hospital. What did you do? And he flees. He flees, gone. Mind you, he's there to take my son shopping for his mission, right? So now my son's completely like, what on earth now? Why did he even come to town? What's going on? Anyway, so the police, let's just fast forward to the police are called when these kind of things happen to get a police report. So they come to the hospital, they're getting a police report. I'm actually grateful I ended up in the hospital, because if I wouldn't have, I wouldn't even be where I am at this point. Um,
Right.
but they do all the tests. We had all the proof, the evidence, all the things. So the police were like, well, you know what, we've got a pretty good story, but like when you're feeling better, when you go home, maybe like on Monday, this was like a Friday, Saturday, like early Saturday morning. So Monday, if you'll come in and give your story. Monday was a holiday. So then by Tuesday, I go to the police station to give them my full report. I'm in there giving my full report, going through everything. And we do have copies of this, because they record all of your interviews, right? After, me telling my whole story at the end, this is not a joke. The police officer looks at me and he says, well, sounds like this is a domestic issue. He's like, they just put me over the DARE program over at the elementary school. And so we'll just get to it when we can get to it. Go home.
Uh, this is where I start just it just makes me so angry. I mean, first of all, Cami, just to go through something that traumatic, and I'm feeling really for your kids as well. But this is the part of the story that really just makes me like fighting angry. What happened after the drugging and the rape and all this is where I think your resiliency is starting to pay off. So this was right away, the police are like, oh, this is a domestic issue, no big deal again.
Yes. And I got to back up and tell a little bit like, so when I had gone to the hospital, I had gone home. And when I got home, there was a burn under my tongue, it looked like a little, like a cigarette burn almost, right? Like something had, really burned underneath my tongue.
Huh.
So I had I work in the dental field. So I'd called the dentist that I'd worked for. And I said, hey, if I send you a picture of this, can you look at this? And he goes, oh yeah, for sure. And he's like, you got to get back to the emergency room right now. You need to go file a report. That's the administrating of drugs under your tongue. And he said, I don't know if it was an injection or a burn of, like a pill, pills continuously.
Sure.
Get a picture of that. So I went back. And so what had happened is that he did give me that drink, which made me pass out, but he continuously through the night put drugs under my system. When I'd gone to the hospital, I was beyond overdosed. And the nurse had said if I would not have made it, like even a few minutes later, there's no way I would have survived that amount of drugs that was in my system. And it was a combination of several different drugs and alcohol, to the point of there's no way I would have survived if I wouldn't have made it to the emergency room that night. So,
Man.
so, um, so to have that proof and evidence, and then the police saying, not that I'm not saying the DARE program's not important, but but I'm told, sorry, we'll get to, thanks for the police report, we'll get to it maybe. So we go a few years, and I have a best friend that is amazing that did not let me quit. She would haul me in to the police station every 6 weeks. What are you doing on my police report? What is happening? Why are you not arresting him? You have the proof. You have the evidence. Well, we're getting to it. We're getting to it. I mean, I can't even tell you how many excuses. Well, during that time, they had fired, I mean, I think as of today, and I'm not exaggerating, I think there's at least 5 chief of polices in that police department that have been terminated, fired, even when we did a news story later, they went to get a news story from the police, which the news and the police station usually will work hand in hand. This police, and I will say it's the North Park Police Department. I will call them.
Okay.
They have 100% turnover with, I can't even tell you how many chief of polices they've gone through the years. So every time we would go in, there was somebody else that had taken over, another detective, another chief of police, and getting absolutely nowhere, right? Nowhere. So
Every time you would go in, Cami, what I'm just wondering, like, was their demeanor just like, hey, we'll just get to it? I mean,
uh,
I'm looking at rape, kidnapping, attempted murder. I mean, if they're not paying attention to the things that happened to you, what are they paying attention to up there?
right, right. And the only thing is they're like, we've got to get an interview from him. We've got to get DNA. We're working on it. Like, we have just story after story, and it was like, but if it would have been for me, I would have given up. I promise you. But my best friend, she's like, we are not giving up. We are not giving up. This is,
Yeah,
had seen me the next morning. She knew exactly what had happened. She was just like, there is no way he's going to get away with this, nor the police department get away with this, right? So she kept me going, kept me going, kept me going. Well, a few years passed, and mind you, my ex had, now married, two young girls, stepdaughters, and had a baby daughter. And um, we get a call. I was actually with my best friend, which is crazy, but we get a call from so so his wife's ex-husband calls us and said, "Hey," and I'm going to tell you, my ex-husband's name is Thad Hatterley, Byron Thad Hatterley. I'm going to use it, but so
yeah,
he's like, Thad's been arrested. And I think, I'm thinking, you're kidding. Like, finally, they do something, right? They're doing something for me. He's like,
yeah.
no, 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 no. He's like, it's not for you. He's like, so his daughter is, I don't know if I should use her name, but so his,
Yeah, let's not use hers.
what?
Yeah, let's maybe not use her name, but I'm happy to put Thad's name out there.
Well, so
Thad.
his stepdaughter um, is this man's daughter. Does that make sense?
Right. Hmm.
So this daughter's dad calls me and says, it's actually because of her. And I'm like, what in the world? Now, me, I have never had any communication at this point with the new wife, the kids, nothing, right? I don't know
Right.
anything about him. He's like, it's because of my daughter. And he's like, let me tell you what happened. He proceeds to tell me that, um, so dad actually, so his wife was out of town, and he had tried to drug and rape his stepdaughter. She fled naked to her neighbor's house, and the neighbor gets her to the emergency room. So when we finally get her story, it's identical to mine. He tried to make her drink a little energy drink to help her with her soccer. And long story short, he'd been doing this 6 months into the relationship to these two girls, drugging and raping them night after night after night. At this point, she had kind of caught on. She was 14, I believe, 14, 15. So she fled, clothes ripped off of her. She went with a huge fight, and thank God she made it to the neighbors.
Yeah.
She gets she gets taken to the emergency room, all the tests, all the things, and charges are filed. I
Wow, finally some charges are filed. I mean, God, this just infuriates me.
But I'm like, holy crap. I said, do you guys know that I have charges filed against him for the same, almost identical in, this other county? Well, then everyone's like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, no. Like, I literally have, this is the other ironic thing, right? So he's held, but only for the weekend at this point, right? I actually had a warrant for his arrest because he did not show up to a hearing that he was supposed to attend for child support, right? Like, this is craziness. It was a dumb thing, but I had it. So I
Ah,
called immediately the um or the jail that he was being held, and I said, "Hey, I have a warrant for his arrest. Can you please hold him and not release him?" Well, this actually was a huge blessing because they held him until he appeared in court, which was over a month later. So we're
oh, good.
him, right? That I called the police department, North Park Police Department, and I'm like, "Hey, just so you know, he's been arrested for the same exact thing on a minor and he's being held." Oh my gosh. So they start, okay, well, I guess we better do something on your case now. So they call me and they're like, "Okay, we're going to go down and do an interview with him because he's being held. So now we know where he is and we're going to get DNA evidence."
Okay, but Cami, they now they're going to go have an interview with him. Did they never go? I mean, I would think what happened to you, they're busting his door down, they're throwing him on the ground, handcuffing him,
No,
hog tying him, and taking him to jail. But they never even bothered talking to him before this?
no, never contacted him. No, nothing, nothing, nothing.
Unbelievable.
So now they go down, they do get DNA evidence, which, later does match with the DNA, with the rape kit, with all the things. Um, right. So we have all the proof, all the evidence, all the things. His when he got charged, arrested, charged, his whole thing with this minor, I think, was less than 6 months from beginning to end. He's charged. In the state of Utah, we have this huge, huge problem. And I'm sure maybe it's in other states. I only know Utah, but everything is reduced because you have to offer pleas, which to me is just unbelievable when you have proof and evidence on things. And I would say, and I'm going to say, that most, if not all, rape charges are reduced to attempted rape in the state of Utah with
Do
proof
you think,
and evidence.
Cami, you've told me this before, and Carl, just kind of help you kind of understand what she's saying right now is for some reason, supposedly in the state of Utah, if the charge is attempted murder, then they automatically make the charge something much less. And the reason that they give is that it's more likely that they can get a conviction.
Yeah, because originally when we had even talked, and even with when this happened, my charges originally in every discussion was kidnapping and attempted murder. Like, there was no other conversation about this except, obviously I was raped, but it was absolute kidnapping, held against my will. The charges, they ended up being filed because it was like, well, we can still get the same amount of years with these charges, and that we know we can get these charges as the kidnapping and attempted murder. So it ended up being, this is not a joke, right? So the charges, he also took photos of me and sent them out to people on my phone. And thank God for those people that sent those back to me. And he took them on my phone, pretending like they were selfies, like I was taking a selfie. And he forgot to empty my trash. So we did have all the proof and evidence of him also distributing my photo naked to people. That charge has a higher charge than rape in Utah. To me,
Oh
that's
my
just
gosh.
right. So I got what they talked about was like, okay, we can get him for sure for the photography. We can get him for continuously drugging you over and over again. And we can get him for definitely rape. But, as you trickle down through the system, it ends up always attempted rape. We did get him on the photos because that's a bigger charge. And the continuously drugging me to the point of almost death. But it's crazy. And even with this minor child, with the proof and evidence of it happening over and over and over again for years, attempted rape once. Are you freaking kidding me? But this is how our system works. And I've heard the frustration of so many women in Utah that with proof, with the DNA, with the rape kit, with all the things, with, and not to be like explicit, but to have that, even that semen, that proof, that evidence, and
Yeah,
attempt, you can't.
that's crazy. Can I ask you something, Cami? Obviously, and I'm not trying to pick on, well, yeah, I am trying to pick on Utah right now because it sounds like they're overall just dropping the ball big time, especially for women victims. In your opinion, do you think that, I mean, the Mormon religion obviously is very strong there, and I think it's pretty well known that the Mormon religion is a very much an old boys kind of, it's a male dominated type of thing. Do you think that's part of the reason why you had these issues and other women, it's because of the culture there in Utah?
Absolutely. And you're seeing it on the news as we speak, right? Just, not even a month ago, we've got judges, we've got chief of, fire departments that are, being charged right now. I mean, it's got to change. We've got to have change. We've got to have reform of this because it's maddening, and it's beyond ridiculous that with proof, with evidence, that we still are giving reduced sentences, offering pleas. But I'll get into that in a second too. But let's just like go back a little bit with,
Right.
he's being held, he's charged, he's convicted. He was sentenced to up to 5 years, is all for this minor. Up to 5 years for what he did to this minor, right? That to me is insane. Insane. Well, still, nothing's filed with my case. Even after all this, even after the DNA that they went and got and the story and all the things that they needed, still no charges are filed. Chief of police terminated. My case sits again. So we go in, me and my friend just going in again. What are we gonna do? We're to the point, like, we cannot let this keep happening. Like, he's, we've got to do something. And they tell me, they're like, well, we hired, no, back when I was telling you I was like held at gunpoint in the bathroom, I lived in a different county than where it
Okay.
happened. Okay. So, and they're about an hour and a half away. So this police department tells me, hey, we're hiring an advocate for our police station, that we're going to have her kind of take over the case and review it. I'm like, great, whatever it takes, whatever it takes. Well, this advocate that they hired, which is about an hour and a half away, happens to be Julie, the same advocate that years previous had helped me get the restraining order. Can you believe? Like,
Ah,
zero chance of this being happening. Julie's the advocate. Julie opens it up and she's like, I wrote this protective order. Like, I know this girl. Well, she calls me up and we both recognize each other's voice. And I said, Julie, it's Cami. And she's like, I knew it was you. And she picks up my case and she goes right to the county and files charges, just like that. Just like that. It wasn't even an hour later that she went and took my case right to the county. Charges were filed. Finally. Finally.
finally.
So even with that being said, you go through the whole justice system and that just shreds you to pieces because you get the charges. They try to tell you this is better because we'll get this. So we get all the way to trial, jury's being picked. The attorney sent me in the office with my kids, and they're like, hey, like, we really want to offer a plea. We feel like we're not going to do that well in trial, which I'm told now this is kind of the regular thing. They don't want to go to trial. So they tell me that we're going to offer this plea, and that's really the end of it. Like, I didn't have a choice. I feel like I was completely backed into the corner. I felt like, here we are. This is what we
As the victim, you had no say in what they were going to charge this creep for.
know. And they tell you, like, well, we can't tell you what to do, but we're going to tell you what to do. This is what we're,
Right.
and you're going to get up to 25 years for sure with these charges. You will absolutely, and you can bank on at least he'll be in there for 15. Nothing less than that. We're very confident this is going to be the best deal. And I felt, okay, 15 years. 15 years is a long time. If this is the best we can do, because you go to trial and you can get nothing, zero, right? So they didn't want that chance. They're telling me that this is fine. So he takes the plea, he's charged. And I'm, again, you go through these cases with a judge and attorneys that go to school for the training of what they're doing, especially a judge. The judge was very compassionate, very beyond awesome, cried tears through my case and said, I wish I could give you more, but I can at least do, the up to 15 years. I can do that for you. Like, we can do this for you. Well, little did I
Okay.
know, and I don't think many people know that that's not where it ends. That is not where it ends. They go to prison, and then there's something called the Utah Parole Board that then takes over. And this is insane to me. Insane. I'm told back after he's sentenced, I'm told by my attorney, go home, go to sleep. You will not have a parole hearing for at least 5 years, 4 to 5 years. So don't worry about anything till then. So we go home. We're like, okay, we won't worry about it. So um, about 2 months later, after he's um, serving his sentence, and mind you, the best thing ever though, he did not get out of jail since that time with the minor child, right? So he's been in here the whole time. So
Okay.
I get a in Utah they had this notification system called Vine, and I get a text. And if you're a victim, you can register with Vine, and they notify you anytime that they move, change, or release, whatever. And I get a notification that he's getting released. Release 2 months
2 months after the conviction.
getting released. Yep.
Carl,
So
I'm just real curious what where your brain is. I mean, I've heard this story before, but what's your thoughts on this so far, Carl?
one, I'm as angry as you, Stan. Disappointed in the legal system, and Cami, I don't. Stan probably hasn't shared this. I grew up. My mother was ran a children's home, so all these kids were from abused and neglected homes, abandoned, and so many of the wives and the husbands and the family stories are similar, not as graphic and not as recent, but terrible, terrible stories. So I have a little bit of that in my background, so I'm not like, I guess I'm never shocked at what people will do to each other these days. I am shocked at the legal system in Utah. It boggles my mind that we're in 2025 or whenever this was, and that women are still. I live with 3 women. I have 2 daughters and a wife. Still treated as second-class citizens in parts of the world for sure, and here in America, it boggles my mind. So my question for you is, he's already under wraps for the minor thing. You got all this evidence and 15 years and all this other stuff, and he still gets out in 2 months. How's this possible?
Well, my first thinking was, oh, wait, this is because of the minor. He served as, up to 5 years. So he's getting out because of that, but it's just a clinical error. Honestly, that's what I thought. I got the notification like on a Friday night, so I can't do anything till Monday. And I'm just like, it's got to be an error. It's got to be an error. So I called the parole board and I said, I'm just curious on what's happening. He's not supposed to be released. He was just sentenced up to 15 years. She goes like, no, no clinical error. He's definitely getting released. He served his time.
Uh,
So I'm like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. This cannot be a possibility. In the meantime, there is a amazing news reporter here in the state of Utah, and she's done stories on failure to protect. She's amazing, and she has picked up my story and done several stories on the failure to protect. Right? She had gone through all of this with me, from she'd done several news stories, and I honestly believe with everything in me that nobody at that Utah parole board would have heard me if they didn't know that I had done these news stories on the failure to protect in the beginning. It was the news that helped me tremendously have my voice be heard with the Utah parole board. So she immediately ran a story about the Utah parole board having, first of all, they had a hearing without notifying me. For number one, they should have at least notified me so that I could have attended that parole hearing. And number two, why are they releasing him? What on earth is going on? So immediately they're just, fumbling like, oh no, what's going on? And so they call me up and they said, okay, well, we did fail to notify you, so we will give you another hearing. We will give you that opportunity. But not, he's not still, it's still not, going to stay in, it's still like, we will give you another hearing. So you,
And when you're talking about this hearing, this is a chance for you as the victim to come in and explain how this has impacted your life, your kids' lives, and so forth. Is that what you mean by that?
yes, and this is the misconception, is that I thought that you have the sentencing, and then your file goes to the parole board, and then the parole board reviews it. No, 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 no. They have no clue. And I'll tell you, because I went and got a copy. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to Daniela Rivera, the news reporter that tells me the things I can do. She said, get a copy of that hearing that you did not attend. It lasted less than, maybe, I don't know, a matter of minutes. He stood before that parole. There's a person that I guess you speak to, and then they take that to the parole board and they review it, right? So he stood before this person, which is not a judge. They're elected officials. They have no training that I know of. They're just the parole board. Who knows where they
Right.
come from?
Yeah.
And all they did was ask Byron Thad Hatterley, what have you done to get out? And he proceeds to say, he's filled out his packet, he took his classes, and he's ready to be out. Do you have a place to live? Yes, I have a place to live. Here's your ticket, you're out. They didn't have any, they didn't even have a clue why he's there, what he's serving his time for, what is going on, nothing, zero. I was just floored. So you go through, and I scream at the top of my lungs. People don't want to go to the parole hearings. Your parole hearings are more important than standing before the judge that sentences him. 100,000,000% more important than standing in front of that judge. And I've heard so many women be like, I don't want to face that person again. I don't want to tell my story again. Well, then you know what? You can guarantee they'll be out in a matter of months. And this is story after story after story in Utah. They are sentenced up to 15 years, up to 25 years, up to 5 years, and they served months.
That's
Months.
crazy.
So when I
Well,
met with the parole board, and we've had discussions with this, and that is the one thing that is so misconstrued, is that they do not know why they're there. They're trying to get them back out.
You'd think
so
with technology, Stan and Cami, that you, like, even this, right? This story right here. Before anyone gets a hearing, watch Cami's story. Press play. You're going to listen to her story for 15 minutes before you meet this guy, and he's going to tell you how he should be. You're going to hear the story from the victim in real time. Not 30 years later, like some of these. Here's what happened. Press play. Oh crap. Yeah, buddy. You could tell me you filled out your packet and you did all your classes. You ain't getting nowhere because I just watched this video from this victim. Sorry, back in.
And why is that? Yeah, why is that so hard? And I don't understand why a judge can hand a sentence when you've got a parole board that's just like, what did you do? Like, and what? I mean, are you kidding me? So I just wasted like the last 7 years trying to get him charged and convicted for some little man to just ask him if he filled out his questionnaire in his packet and did his class. Are you kidding me? And that's
this,
their life here. But needless to say, we did get this other hearing, and you can bet we filled the entire room at that hearing full, and not just people that were there to support me. It was because he had either physically, mentally, financially hurt those individuals. I didn't even have to say, like, you guys come and support me. I'm like, Byron Thad Hatterley's getting out of prison, and that room, you can guaranteed, was full. There wasn't one person there to support him, to stand up for him. We filled that room full, story after story of what a horrible person he is, and he should be in for life, for life, for life. And the thing that makes me furious is that they didn't even know he was already in there serving time for doing the exact same thing to a minor child as me. And we had other victims come forward. But unless you have proof and evidence of being in the hospital, will you ever get charges? Ever get charges
and
in Utah?
so um he's still there.
He's still there. We did,
Okay.
voices were heard, but there's not another hearing till 2027 with still no decision at this point.
Okay. So first of all, some of my takeaways on this, and you had said this to me that silence leads to other victims, and you had mentioned that you've talked to a lot of women since then, and they don't want to face the person again. Totally understandable, but being silent. I mean, if the dang police force would have done something right away, right from the first time he had you at gunpoint, we probably would have had a lot less people in that room that have been victimized, let alone young females. I mean, that's got to just impact them the rest of their lives.
For the rest.
Through all of your advocacy, you become sort of a voice of survivors. Um, you've taken your trauma and hopefully have empowered some of things. But let's talk a little bit about, has there been any changes to the system? Has there been anything at all that's a bright light at the end of this that maybe, okay, this may not happen again with another fad that's out there?
Well, the one thing is, this Utah Parole Board, they failed to notify me of this hearing. Correct.
Mhm.
So they have and are trying to update the system. So because what they would do is mail out a letter, and their excuse for mine was that they didn't have my correct address. Well, even the courts verified that they had my correct address. So that, who even knows, right?
Yeah.
But they are now in the year 2025 decided that we shouldn't mail out letters. We should notify by email, text, whatever we need to do to notify of these hearings. And this is the thing that people do not even kind of comprehend. You have to go to these parole hearings because otherwise they just let these criminals out. And I see it all the time, even on, on social media, like, oh, this person only got a few months, this person only got a few months, this person only got a few months. It's because nobody is going to these parole hearings. They don't understand. These attorneys need to tell these women, you need to go to the parole hearing. That's way more important. And if you can't even attend, you can write letters, you can send somebody in your behalf. But those that parole board has no idea what you've been through or why that person is incarcerated unless you're there and present to tell your story again.
That's insane to me. How could they not get a full packet going? This person's in prison right now because he did this, and this.
And
They don't even see that?
why not even a cover sheet? Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is a rapist, this is a murderer, this is, here's, if you would like to review, or like, 15-minute video that, short summary of what happened. Why is this not attached to that file that goes to the parole board?
Yeah. I would think, Carl, I think that you had a really good idea. Why not do a video that stays in that file? And every time they are up for any kind of a parole, the first thing they have to do is watch the video of the victim saying, this is what this person has done. Man, I know you have been relentless. You have faced a horrible thing with courage. And I want to point out too that you've mentioned your best friend, you've mentioned the advocate, you've mentioned the reporter Daniela Rivera. There's four women right there that have helped you through this and have without the strength of these women, we might not even be talking about this right now. So I want to commend all of them for that. What's your hope, Cami? What's your hope for the future um, when it comes to this kind of thing? What kind of change would you really want to see?
I want to see women protected. I want to see women's voices heard. I mean, even right now, like, you can pull up Utah and all the things that Utah's got going on with, sexual offenses that, it's horrific. It is horrific. We're at the top of the list for so many horrific things to women. And it's got to change. Like, laws have got to be better. I mean, even like with me, one of the things is, Byron Thad Hatterley is supposed to be on the registered sex offender list for life. That was one of the things I was promised, right? And even
Hmm.
a couple months ago, they're trying to change the law so that there's not a lifetime on the registry. It's 10 years. We get one step forward and then 15 steps backwards. So it's horrible. Like it's horrible. And I mean, even Daniela Rivera, that she's ran, all these stories on failure to protect. And it's crazy because even these laws that are presented in, the first of the year on Capitol, on the Capitol, like they get no votes. They get no votes, but we get, new um, sports teams. We get new sports arenas. We get, all this other things and all these votes for these, priorities. And the sex offense, none.
It's just getting nowhere. Well,
Zero.
I the only chance of any change is to continue doing exactly what you're doing right now, Cami. And I'm proud of you, and I'm honored to be your friend, because I know that you didn't quit, and I can tell that you don't ever plan on quitting to try to make some changes so that other people don't have to suffer through what you've done. Speaking of that, and speaking of using your voice, I understand that you recently were on another podcast channel like this with a woman who's very famous. It's very interesting to me too that once again her story happened in Salt Lake City, Utah. Elizabeth Smart.
Yes. And recently, I don't know if you just know, recently, just a matter of weeks ago, Wanda Barzee was, we had talked about this in the podcast. That was one of her captors. She was released early because she was a woman. And me and Elizabeth
Okay.
both have said what's ironic about that is she should have had a stiffer penalty because she was a woman, but
Mhm.
gave her that leniency and released her. She was just rearrested for violating her whatever it was that she violated and
Yeah.
rearrested. But it's funny that we had said the same thing. Like it's just crazy and maddening that these people, these horrific people, it doesn't matter really if you're male or female, that they're released. They shouldn't be released. What they did to her is horrific. And here we are how many years later, and she's rearrested again. And we hear this time and time and time again. I mean, I would say more than not, they reoffend. Period. They reoffend. But yeah, Elizabeth Smart, crazy, crazy in Utah.
Yeah.
But
Carl, you're
That's
familiar with Elizabeth Smart's story, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's terrible. I the reoffend, that's a whole nother podcast, the reoffend, because the rehab, again, this documentary I'm working on, Cami, with my foster brother, he was in jail for 4. There's no rehab in there. I mean, they're just, in many instances, they just learn how to be a better criminal,
yeah,
right? Because that's all they're doing is hanging out with other criminals. And so the reoffense rate is so high. I see
Well,
your story, Cami, as just one of survivor, a change agent. And what is really intriguing to me is this Daniela Rivera. Like, we all make fun of and criticize the press now. This is what the press was for. Like, I love the undercover expose type of, like, that's real and that's powerful stuff. So, like Stan said, you know, uh, this lady deserves a lot of credit for sticking with you and telling the stories, because I'm sure she's getting heat from people too. But man, that telling this story to as many people in as many different channels and mediums and platforms is just what you got to keep doing. So
it's the only shot of making any difference that I can see is let's just expose. That's why I don't mind. In fact, I commend you for saying Byron Thad Hatterley's name over and over again. And the North Park Police Department, who dropped the ball, they deserve to be exposed on this. So I have no problem with helping that cause for you, Cami. And this reoffense thing, and yeah, prison makes him a better criminal. When you get a monster like Byron Thad Hatterley, there's no rehabbing someone who has tortured and victimized so many people. That's who he is. He's evil, and he needs to be away from all of society. And man, I hope we can do our part in helping to spread your story, and let's see what we can do to help you make some change, Cami.
well, I so appreciate that. And I think, people ask me, all the time, like, I mean, I can't save everyone, right? Like I can't do that, but I can stop Byron Thad Hatterley from hurting one more little girl. You bet I can.
Yeah.
You bet I can, and I will, and I won't stop until there is not like no more, like no more. But if every woman did this, like you don't understand, it is so absolutely true. Silence just leads to more victims, and there shouldn't be any little girl or little boy victims. Period.
Well, and
Period.
this is where I really commend, you've said it over and over that your best friend was really instrumental in keeping you going there because as the victim, this has been documented over and over that victims don't want to have to relive it. They don't want to have to tell their story again. They're afraid to confront that person, and who can blame them? So I really commend your friend and your advocate and the reporter and all these people, because a lot of the women who probably are not speaking up and telling their stories, they may not have been lucky enough. Oh God, it's hard to say lucky enough to have these other women to back them up and support them through this. So,
Yeah,
man,
the blessing of a good friend is, you know, is important. And I think that that's where I go back to technology. Those people who don't want to share their story over and over and over, I 100% agree with them and feel for them. Then just tell it one time on tape. It's stored somewhere, and guess what? Hit play, right?
Yeah.
This YouTube goes everywhere around the world. I mean, somebody could build a truth channel or a warehouse of this data so that you could tell your story over and over and over without having to go through the pain of it and the shame of it and all that crap. Just tell it one
or
time.
having to be in the same room with your monster. I can understand why people wouldn't want to do that.
It's so true. But then again, I go back to my frustration is why do we even have a Utah Parole Board? Like, I honestly believe that like we already have to go through the horrificness of going through the justice system. You get what you get because you have to offer a plea. Well, why doesn't it stop at the plea? You already got a reduced sentence. That's it. You're in. Stay. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand why we're even in front of somebody that's not educated, that's not even hearing the story. They're just there to be like, what did you do? What did you do? You know, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for taking that class. I mean, literally, that's how it was when I had the tape of the recording of that hearing.
What's your theory on that, Cami? Why do you think that's the way it is? Is it the culture, again, the male-dominated culture that does this, or what? Do you have a theory on why the Utah system is that jacked up?
I do have a theory. That's probably
Let's hear it.
another podcast for religious trauma.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm all for having you back on. So
Yeah,
I want to wrap this up. Carl, I don't know how you're feeling about skipping what we normally do at the end of this. I just don't think it's appropriate this
yeah,
at this, even though I had Cami prepared for it, as far as the cars, what you drove and
yeah.
stuff. But Cami, we do always end our what drives you and ask our guests to give some advice, words of wisdom, maybe something that you would tell a younger you or anything. But if I were to ask you to kind of sum it up and just give some words of wisdom that you want to end this with, this podcast, what would that be?
Well, number one, attend the parole hearings, no matter what, would be, you know,
Yeah.
anyone. But to tell myself as a younger girl, I would have said, and this makes me cry, but it would have been, love myself, love myself, and take care of myself, and don't depend on a man for that. Not that a man can't come into that, but I think that especially in the Mormon religion and culture, it's so important to teach young girls to love themselves and to be able to provide for themselves, not depending on somebody else to do that for you. And
Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's what I think is so important going forward.
This has been an emotional one, and but an important one. And I've said this to you privately, and I think I've already said it here on this podcast, but I'm honored to be your friend. I'm honored to know you. I have such crazy respect for you and admiration for your strength. And I'm a lucky guy to count you as a friend, Cami. I appreciate you.
You, I love you so much, so much. We've been friends for a long time, and I appreciate you allowing my voice to be heard.
Yeah. Carl, anything before we say goodbye?
Yeah, keep fighting the fight, young lady. You're amazing. Thank you.
You.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching this very important edition of What Drives You. Cami, I'll talk to you soon. Carl, as always, buddy, it's good to see you. Take
Take
care,
care,
everyone.
guys.